Okay, well, welcome everyone. I guess probably big announcement is that Nick has left Facebook, which doesn't really affect any of us directly, but hopefully he can still find time to hang out with us. So I hope greener pastures are great, and I hope we keep seeing you.
Yeah, me too. I guess glad to hear that made the big news announcement. But yeah, thanks, man. I am at Apple now working on malware RE and binary analysis type stuff.
We like you, so it's big news.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, I'm gonna still be around. I won't be coding anymore for a bit for obvious reasons. And that's about it. I mean, I had kind of tapered off anyway, just because I was running out of time in my personal time. So that's about it. But.
So probably first kind of time thing we've been trying to allocate is time for community folk to bring anything up. So if anyone has any questions or wants to talk about how to do anything cool or has an issue or PR they want to discuss, now's a great time to bring it up. Meeting's kind of open to whomever.
I'm interested in what the status is on that Windows event overhaul refactor, the Windows eventing subsystem refactor PR that Alessandro opened and Nick reviewed. Let me see if I can get the PR number.
As far as I remember, that was just kind of waiting on like a final review and sign off or something.
Are there edits that we owe you at this point? At the reviewer?
I gave it a look through. Like, it looks good to me. I had a couple of questions about where things lived, like the call to move the config parser for the cosine similarity stuff in like alongside the event publishers was a little kind of weird to me, just because it seems like we have a place for config parsers, but you do you. I'm like, I don't think it's a huge problem. Overall, the code looks great, and I'm really excited to see that ship. So from a code review perspective, I'm happy to stamp it and approve it and say let's move forward, because it's big, and if there's breakage, I'd rather get it in and start testing it and have the other bugs kind of trickle out.
It looks like you already did approve it.
Okay, cool. I couldn't remember what I had done for it, but
I think that means unless Trail of Bits wants to like change anything in response to that feedback, I think someone could just click the big merge button.
Well, I would
changes,
actually
right?
say let's kick there's suggestions or questions. So I would kick the ball to Alessandro, and I just kind of ask that he does one quick look through and just make a decision on if he agrees with anything I left, and then I'd say merge it.
I would agree with that. Yes, it's his call on that one.
In its current form, it's mergeable. Like, there's not going to be anything bad happen if we merge it, but I just had a couple of notes that I would love to at least have somebody like look at. So
yeah,
Alessandro,
I will address some of your. I'm sorry, I just got back. Yeah, I will address some of your concerns on the pull request, and then we can revisit it and merge it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Yeah.
Someone has written down container access tables. This is like part of the ongoing work from Stefano, which is pretty cool, actually. I assume that's what this all is, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
So I think that those just need reviewers, and they're not as big as the Windows event tables changes.
We settled on PID with namespace, right? That's what we settled on for now.
Yeah, well, I kind of owe a comment and answer on the issue Teddy opened about the name,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Do we?
I don't think we.
Sorry, I'm sort of like chewing for a moment. I think in that issue, I think we probably need to resolve that issue before we merge these. And I feel like one of the questions was whether like PID with namespace is a hidden column, or like what it needs to be in terms of part of indexes, the indexing and things. That sound right to you? I think we just have to make a decision. I don't think it's necessarily a big decision.
Any opinions on that? Can we find the issue that you opened
I'm
that
looking.
in? Okay.
I'm looking.
Is it PID from processes? Not.
I'm looking.
No, it's
6428.
Yeah, good. I mean, I can say one of the things. So Teddy wrote some ideas on how to do it, possibly do it otherwise. The base problem with some of those is that the API which switches the namespace do not require a namespace ID, but it requires a PID. So having a function that simply convert or the user pass the namespace ID instead of the PID won't work. Or yes, you can still do it, but then you have to each time you have to scan all the processes and find one process that has that namespace ID. So it's not.
I mean, I don't know. You should probably just comment in the issue, and people should probably join in there. My general bias would be something like just shifting some things to hidden call. I don't know. I'll let you hash it out there. So I don't know.
I think my favorite of all these is to come up with some views, like automatically created views, where we append the word containerized underscore, or we can substitute this with anything. And then those schemas have those two columns not hidden. That way, everyone who was using these tables before, which a containerizable table is a great thing and will be used on a lot of tables that we have right now. So I want to sort of maintain the API and expectations for columns and usage for people that are using these tables right now. And then in the future, if people want to adapt these to work on containers, they have to use a new table, so they won't get it for free. They'd have to explicitly say, I also want to select from containerized underscore system info or containerized underscore Debian packages.
We maybe interesting in this context is that Ryan, who has just joined Uptix, told us he was here and is working on container-related things. So maybe Ryan would like to read this discussion. See if
I'm not
if Uptix
caught
has any.
up on the discussion here, but in general, the idea of being able to have tables that can either function for container purposes with extra columns or host seems a lot easier than having a whole bunch of copies of table specs with different varieties of subcolumns.
And in that case, I think Teddy was saying that ideally the view has all the columns the other table has. So it's basically creating from the base of the host column, but then it has the other two columns necessary for it to work. So
Does in Teddy, in your view proposal, does the underlying table still have the columns? They're just hidden, or are they not selectable without the view?
They would be hidden. It's not that they're not selectable without the view, but a hidden column, even if you use it in the predicate, needs to be explicitly selected. So you're repeating yourself if you're going to write this query out. There's always this option where we can ask SQLite to develop a feature for us. So you can imagine us requesting a feature, say, if you use certain columns, in the predicate and they are hidden, then they do show up in the implicitly selected set of columns. We need to throw money at that problem if we want to do it. So sort of pay the consortium.
You would only need to duplicate the extra columns you've added to the predicate, though. You could still do a
Correct.
column, column, comma, star to pull out the results of all the other ones.
Correct. So it doesn't perfectly fit the don't repeat yourself, but it also isn't that difficult. Yeah. I would love that. Honestly, I would love to move forward with this if we just make them hidden, and then the expectation is if people are using these for containers, that they explicitly select the columns.
I think that's your suggestion number 1 there. No, I can't quite tell.
Out of
No.
curiosity, are we able to avoid the expense of fetching that data for each container if they aren't specifying that they're interested in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do know at query time what columns are selected, which is cool. I was really hopeful about that we could influence that as well. So you get a bit mask, and we could set some of those bits to say that I do want to return these columns, but that's a read-only parameter given to us. However, looking into like the plumbing of that, that's why I made the suggestion like we could engage the SQLite consortium, and ask for this feature. In the past, we've done this, and we've gotten like 4 new things added to SQLite specifically for Osquery. And the turnaround from like sending an email being like, hey, it would be nice to have this, to getting that feature added was maybe a week or a week and a half.
I mean, that if we think that's a preferred API and it's not an unreasonable feature, it might be worth inquiring, but it probably also depends a little bit on, what the costs for it likely will be, right? Like, we're not a particularly rich foundation, though. No, we have a small amount of money. But I feel like I kind of am happy to defer to like Stefano and Teddy and folks writing this, and I'm kind of it'd be relatively simple, and I would be perfectly happy if they were just hidden columns and you had to stick them into your select clause, and it seems like a good enough first pass or something.
Sorry, Stefano, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I was thinking you also, one of the solutions I think you mentioned or the question you had, it was to use a function in place of a table. So in the from directive, I saw, and I still don't know how precisely it works, but I saw that it is possible actually to return a table from a function. So that I was wondering if I could, in that case, do something about it. But so simply you don't, in this way, those columns are not columns but are information passed. So no, wait, they still have to be passed in some way. Yeah, the only doubt I had is how do we pass this information to the table itself? So I know that it's possible to use a function, but yeah, I haven't looked beyond that.
And I think Ryan, to be clear, that if we had these as the same table name, I don't think by default, like you would have it act on the host and then act on containers. I think you explicitly need to say like, here's the change to the predicate that I'm making because I want this to inspect containers. What about the last option number 5, where we hide this API for communicating with the table, which is the PID from namespace column. So we hide that, and we only return the mount namespace ID. Do you still get enough information to differentiate what columns are coming from what containers?
So I see there was a possible issue, which is that the user can give 2 PIDs which are in the same namespace. So they will return the same information.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there, if only SQLite, when you give it, well, there are also other cases where you can, but if you had all the PID in a list, then obviously you could check it beforehand and see and tell, yeah, you have duplicate PIDs, I will drop one of them because it's duplicate. But yeah, I haven't found a way to deduplicate.
Does it make any sense to merge these PRs now in the state that they're in with this discussion being ongoing, or is this discussion kind of quick? I mean, can we reach a consensus and make this change quickly, or what do you think?
I don't think the two are related, so we can merge independently of resolving this issue.
In that case, I think I want to go back to finding a reviewer for those 2 PRs. Just they're small. Any volunteers?
I'm slightly concerned about adding random columns that we might change or remove to what are probably popular tables. So I'm sort of, I feel like I'd like to resolve whether the columns are hidden by default before we just kind of add them, though maybe I'm being too conservative.
I thought you might say that.
There is features to not break anything. So if someone to start explicitly selecting from columns that we've introduced and we change our mind and rename them, we can create aliases, and there's some like tooling to do that. So you don't have to be too concerned. I do like your conservative view, but you don't have to be too concerned. Like, we can fix things.
I guess actually the other argument against the conservative view is, as long as we resolve it and fix it before we cut a release, it kind of doesn't matter.
That too, yeah.
Presumably, if people are building from master source, they're willing to accept some of the breakages and or changing APIs.
That's true.
I can probably try and review these. I mean, they look pretty tiny. I can't really review them for C++ subtlety, but they look relatively straightforward for mechanical PRs. So I can take a quick view of them.
Okay, yeah, and see if they work for what they're supposed to do, right?
Could be.
Okay.
I guess I actually probably can't spin up a container environment, so I'm assuming that the submitter has tested the veracity of them.
Maybe Stefano could give you a quick step for that. Just test it like in a comment on the PR.
Okay, that'd probably be good.
I just personally tested using Docker locally. Just
just throw a note in there. I'll take a look.
Yeah. Okay.
What about making these hidden right now and then just moving forward as fast as possible on reviewing and merging and adapting new tables? And then we can also release if we need to release, like emergency release. And then at some point in the future, when we do kind of come to a nice consensus on this, it would be choosing to move them into not hidden or some other option.
I think I agree. It would also allow people to start using it from master and see if there's any additional feedback we can use in the future before this gets into the release.
Yeah, we could write a good wiki page too that essentially has the example queries on how to use this right now, and like presumably those would never become stale whether we change the hidden or not.
Just writing that into these various places. So, do any of the other community folk have something before we jump into next Trail of Bits agenda item?
I have to drop from the call a little earlier. Sorry, guys. But I'm on Slack if you need me. Thank you.
So I have another Trail of Bits thing. Not a. it's not an ask. Or
okay,
like,
bring it up. No one else has jumped on this.
So I decided to do a 2-year recap of that, like how teams are using Osquery study that I did back in 2017. I just sort of noticed, like, I know I've been kind of out of the loop for a while, but in like keeping like loose tabs on what's been going on, it seems like you guys have kind of been like killing it in developing most of the stuff people were annoyed about initially. And so I'm really curious about like where things stand now and how teams are using it, what new features they want, what pain points they still have. So I started reaching out to people. I've already got quite a few interviews scheduled. And I think most folks on this call are primarily developers, but if anyone's actually using Osquery heavily on their own fleet and wants to like be interviewed, let me know and I'll like include you in it. People who get interviewed, it's kind of nice because it ends up like showcasing the needs that they have. So it's a nice thing to do. You can kind of like be heard. But the cooler thing probably for this group is that hopefully I'm planning to get something published by like the end of the month, and we should have some more data on just like users and how deployment has changed and if any needs have changed. It could be helpful when we're prioritizing stuff and pushing things out. So fingers crossed, that's heading down the pike.
Yeah, the results of the last investigation were really helpful. So we can definitely prepare to allocate some time to like addressing whatever is found.
Yeah, I'm hoping it'll be helpful again. I'm very interested to see how people's deployments has like matured and changed. Because they have a suspicion, just like based off of the little pieces of data I'm hearing from like clients and stuff, that's just morphed a lot over time. So it'll be really cool to see.
Cool.
Actually, maybe to that point, there's a pretty like simple standard format I used last time, which I'm planning to follow this time around like the questions I ask and stuff. But if you're super curious about like any specific kind of data about users, let me know and I can like asked that question too in some of the interviews and get it.
I think debugging is a concern that I'll eventually bring to you, and just as like a pain point. So when you don't have information, how do you track down why you don't have that information? And so that would be interesting to, like, I guess selfishly, I'd love to know how people are debugging or how people are resolving those sort of scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine a lot of people have been in a situation where they started an investigation and their conclusion was, oh, it's not running for some reason on some set of hosts. And then when they followed up to figure out why, like what steps did they take, and can we roll those sort of steps into just features that Osquery has?
That's a great one. Okay, cool. I'll add that to the mix.
Probably next up, proposed table ideas for discussion. Mike?
Yes. So a client reached out to me about maybe doing these tables, and I thought they sounded reasonable. I want to make sure that the group thinks so before we start telling them what we might do for these. The first one is just the existing Windows Events log table is, I guess, evented, and they wanted to know if it makes sense to try to write one that does like pick from the event log on disk without needing to run in an evented fashion. So with, I guess, scoped queries, carefully not to, cause a large query result. I guess A, are there precedents for this in the other tables? And B, is this something that sounds like it makes sense for Osquery?
Wasn't like the Mac syslog table like that? Like the ASL table?
Sort of. The ASL table used the built-in tooling on the Mac that had a query language that allowed us to like constrain those queries in a good way. And so I wonder if there's a parallel sort of API on Windows, or some way that we can prevent having to read through the entire Windows event log archive.
There is.
Yeah.
This has been on my hit list for a long time. I had a branch where I think I even started trying to do this a lot, like years ago. So I would love to have this table, and there's definitely a way that you can filter back and be very precise with the types of questions you're asking of the event log. And I think it'd be incredibly useful because like doing this in PowerShell with their cmdlets, I don't know. I would rather do it in SQL than do it in PowerShell's cmdlets. I'd love it.
Is there a reasonably stable API?
Yeah. For doing this, absolutely, there is.
Cool.
Do you have those resources so we could use them for discussing this? And
let me see if I can find the branch, and I'll send it to you over Slack.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely on board with the concept of the table for sure, and I've worked with folks who would love to be able to get at those archives without having to have Osquery running, in particular because there are a lot of events that take place during shutdown or startup that Osquery can't capture right now because of that. Although Osquery somewhat can using the bookmark thing, but yeah, anyway.
Cool. There you go. And then you also asked about Yara.
Yeah, this is a bit of a trickier question. Well, I'm not too familiar with this table, but I'm told that in computing Yara signatures or in checking them, it has to drop files to the system. Is this true? Does anyone know this?
So I believe there are a couple of things here. One of them is that the Yara table is not compiled on Windows, and I think I think Packet 0 had some fixes for that. And maybe Zach, did you pick that up? Right.
I didn't start working on it, but I'm looking at the questions are 1, Windows support for Yara, and 2, putting Yara signatures within the query. Both of those were in the same pull request from Alex Malone, Packet 0.
Okay.
I'll see if I can pull that one up here.
They both seem reasonable to me. I think the Yara on Windows was probably like a build system oversight or just limitation. Like, I don't think that was ever intentional. So if it works, that'd be great. I think it's pretty interesting to add the Yara signatures to the query, and I don't know enough about Yara to know why that might be a bad idea. So broadly speaking, they both seem good to me.
So it's PR 5285 that attempted to implement some of this stuff, and I think just didn't make it through because it was during the dark times. The other thing that that might be nice to address while looking at Yara things is we've got Yara events on some platforms. What is that? Mac and Linux. Now that we have the NTFS file events table, maybe we could also implement Yara events on Windows. I think that would be a pretty awesome capability.
I agree.
Mike, I sent you some stuff over Slack, but just so other people know, it looks like I already had that table largely written. I just never finished it out. And I think the reason I never finished it out is because I was trying very hard to build a more abstracted way to convert XML to JSON. So that way it could be used in the Windows Event Log Publisher as well.
I'll be
So I sent you that branch. I hope that's helpful. Like, I definitely don't have time to see it through to completion, but I can't imagine it would take too many more commits to get it into a mergeable state. It's just really old and it needs to be rebased and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. I mean, that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Can you paste? I'll find the link. I'll put it in the notes.
Okay.
You sent it to me.
I sent it to you in Slack. Yeah, in the DM.
Often the Collide Go extensions, I wrote some general XML to Osquery table functions, but they're of no use to us, but I can sympathize. I don't know. Any other questions, Mike? It sounds like you've got broad support as long as the code's good.
Yeah, no questions. It sounds like we just we have a green light to do this or work on this. I mean, other people have worked on this. It would be an issue of pushing it forward.
Hopefully it's easy work, and it seems valuable to get in. The other thing that I added into here was I wanted to check with Nick about the state of Windows code signing. At least right now, builds and code signing happens by Nick with, I think, Nick's Facebook cert.
No, it's just a personal code signing key. It's Nick Anderson's. Facebook paid for it, but it's Nick Anderson's personal code signing key.
Cool. So we can ignore this for another release cycle.
I'm like, we can definitely move to a different key. I'm happy to set up an exchange and get you guys my private key to use, because like I don't have use for it. The only reason I have this is for Osquery signing. So I have no problems handing it over. The PR to ship the chocolatey package generation was kind of the last big step that we needed for package generation. Getting it signed, I don't know how to integrate that piece, but at the very least, the CPAC logic will be there for either MSI or chocolatey. So I'd really like to get that shipped, because then I'm hoping that for the most part, the Windows packaging should largely be off of my shoulders. The other thing is I'd love to get somebody else added to the Osquery chocolatey package. There's a way, so if people have chocolatey accounts, you just make a chocolatey account. I can add you to the Osquery package, and then other people can ship this instead of just me.
I can do that, so at least there's someone else. I don't
Sure,
know that
that would
I'm
be
the right
great.
person to ship chocolatey packages, but I can at least play another admin.
Getting somebody on there so that way it's not tied to me would be super ideal. So just go to chocolatey.org, make an account, and send me your account info over Slack, and I'll add you to the project. Thanks, man.
I would caution against giving out the private key. I don't know if that's okay with like Microsoft's code signing terms of use, but maybe there's like a signing party that we could set up where someone else builds everything and Nick just like sits there and presses the button until we have a way forward.
On OS X, we've been hesitant to. We haven't wanted to just change the signing keys on OS X too many times, because sometimes we theorize some people have baked those into their MDM profiles. So we have an issue open for saying, like, once we finally get Osquery keys from Apple, then maybe we'll cut a new release when we move the signing over to make it easier for people with MDM environments. Is any of that true for Windows, or do we just need a valid Authenticode key that has passed the smart screen?
Yeah, if you don't have an EV code signing certificate and you just have like a personal code signing key, and you're like not known to Microsoft, you might get hit with the smart screen, but it's like a softer smart screen. Like it just says, "Hey, we don't know."
I know. So
my key passes that. And I mean, for the foreseeable future, as long as I've got this key for the next year at least, I'm happy to continue signing it and be the bearer. And yeah, like Ted has a good point. We might be violating some terms of service if we pass that off. But it would be good for us to try. I don't know if Microsoft has something for us to try to get an EV code signing cert.
So I've looked a little bit.
Donate it. Yeah,
so I've looked a little bit at EV certs, primarily for Collide, right? Because we ship MSIs as well.
Yeah, sure.
And what I found was that EV code signing certs are just a tremendous pain in the neck, because Microsoft mandates that they be delivered in hardware. So it creates like running cloud builds is hard, and like there are cloud HSMs, but like they're not cheap. So for Collide, I have just purchased standard certs and gone through the reputation building process. It wasn't that long.
Sure.
So we may want to just do something similar where we go and get ourselves certs and and be like, "Yep, Osquery next release, you get smart screened until 20 of you have downloaded it, and then maybe it'll be okay."
Yeah.
So I wouldn't take that as a non-starter. It's the reality we have.
Yeah.
And this is what it is.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not super high priority. I'm still around, and I don't think there's an issue with me signing and pushing packages. I think that I'm okay, at least. I'm just going to keep doing it, and if I get in trouble, then I'll bring it up then. But for now, I think it's fine.
The thing I was wondering is whether is there a downside to just changing who signs something in Windows? Like, does that get baked into anyone's group policy?
I think the only thing, I could be wrong. I absolutely could be wrong. I think the biggest negative impact we'd see is just people getting smart screen from a new code signing cert. I don't think that there's any kind of like trusted profile code certs or something like that. And somebody who's better at Windows, please jump in and tell me I'm dumb, but.
Cool. Next question. Does anyone else have anything else on Nick's stuff? Next item is an eBPF question from Alessandro.
Yes, who is not here, but he asked us to ask on his behalf. I think he might be looking for feedback from Upticks about eBPF work. Stefano might have more context. I don't have any context.
Actually, no, I don't. I think we.
Are there Upticks folks on the call still?
Yeah, both myself and Nishant are here, and we do eBPF stuff. So if we know what the question is, we can try to help.
Oh, okay. So you don't really know what he's referring to? Okay. All right. Well, then we'll just table that one.
Anyone want to bring anything else up?
Now's your chance. It's office hours. You can discuss anything.
I apologize. I haven't had a chance to take a look at PRs or anything like that. Is there any work being done on the endpoint security framework for future releases of macOS for process and network auditing?
I think that I think I have two answers to that. So I'm also writing this down.
I was taking a note, but it sounded like the question was about the evented process.
I got the note. So the endpoint security framework has two things that have to happen. One of them is that we have to get code sign permission to use it, which is in my nebulous code signing project, which is to say, once we have an Apple developer account, then we can start like code signing. Then we have to like
request the entitlement. And Mike, you did some of this. So there's like some stuff we haven't done yet. Then there's a different piece of it, which is like someone should write code. I think Charvel maybe played with that or didn't. I don't think I've seen a full PR. I see Charvel lurking. I don't know if he'll poke up.
I did a proof of concept. I can expand on that if needed, but it was pretty straightforward. Yeah.
You want to PR your POC?
I'll try to revive that and see what I can do.
Cool, thank you.
Is there a timeline for your code signing project?
Well, I've submitted things to Apple, and I'm currently waiting to have Apple tell me that, yes, they recognize that we're a nonprofit and they will not charge us money. At some point, I might get bored of waiting and just pay them, but
sure.
That goes. After I get that done, then I can figure out how to think about the entitlements. And there's sort of this other unrelated issue where like we haven't really ever solved how to do code signing as part of CI. Like a CI/CD pipeline, and we might just keep kicking that forward. Like we can always kind of keep that as a manual step for now, but it'd be nice if we figured that one out. So no strict timeline, but I can say I have submitted all the docs that I think Apple needs to grant us a cert, and that was last week or the week before or so. So,
okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, on that topic, Alessandro and I have already been working on a tool for something like this. And so I guess if there's any specific questions about how it's done or how to do it, just, let one of us know.
Sure. I'm mostly looking to the future
as OpenBSM and other things are seemingly going away, keeping Osquery functional and effective on, and just sort of like what the plans are and the vision are going forward, as opposed to specific like code implementation details.
Yeah, well, these are, I think, have been on the wish list for a while. The OpenBSM support, I believe, is safe for now. I don't know of any plan to deprecate it. I do know that kernel extensions are quickly being deprecated, and that's what endpoint security is mostly intended to replace.
And Chaos is deprecated now as well. I think it'll still continue to work for one more release, but yeah, the message is pretty clear that it's going away.
We have OpenBSM.
Yeah, that's slowly being replaced as well.
I had a minor question about this. On Linux for K-audit, we allow Osquery to configure audit by essentially some predefined rules. If you enable these flags in Osquery, it will add rules to audit, and then you can turn on receiving process start events and similar. In macOS, we don't do that. We give a wiki page on how to enable these yourself, and then Osquery just subscribes to the audit pipe and then parses the relevant messages. We can change Osquery to mimic the functionality on Linux, such that it's sort of out-of-the-box experience, start Osquery, turn on some flags, and get process auditing on macOS. And in that case, you wouldn't have to change any etc files, and you wouldn't have to reboot your machine. It would be a little bit of work to test it, but there are lots of examples of doing that. Lots of examples. There's like 3+ examples in Google of other people doing this that you could learn from. If someone wants to take on this opportunity, I think the majority of time would be in testing that it works. There's some concerns like you don't want to overwrite rules, so on and so forth. All of those concerns are handled in Linux, so it's essentially taking a look at how it's done in OpenBSM via online examples, taking a look at how we handle these flags in Linux, merging the two, and testing it. I would say it's probably a week or two worth of work if someone wants that opportunity. Stop.
Just as a point of information, OpenBSM supports the same sort of dynamic rule configuration. This isn't rewriting etc. This is like, using whatever the internal API is.
It does, yes. And the current concerns we try to mitigate on Linux is we may come to a system and someone turns on these rules, and there's existing rules, and so we can choose to overwrite them or we can choose to merge them. It's most important when Osquery turns off is your expectation that those rules we added dynamically still exist. So we already figured out what we consider like best practice here, and we've implemented that on Linux, so you just adapt it. But all the same concepts exist on macOS.
But Mac doesn't contain that sophisticated rules, what Linux has. Pushing or filtering based upon PIDs, UIDs, EIDs. Mac just filters on AUID, and mostly it's of no use.
That makes sense, yeah. I'm not sure if we're using those expressive filters in Linux, though. I think there's another topic here that sort of segues nicely, and I'm bringing it up for discussion. One consistent problem I see with Osquery, the problem is people don't know what's happening, and the root cause is usually the watchdog will stop Osquery if it takes too many system resources. So there are a couple implicit unknowns here that cause confusion. One, we don't do a good job at communicating the exact system resources that Osquery took and when watchdog decided to take an action. Instead, we report the status log of like Osquery is using too much system resources, :12 or something like that. What the 12 corresponds to is something like it's using more than 3% of the available system resources for over 9 seconds, something like this. That can be improved pretty easy. But what I wanted to kind of bring up is like, going forward, do we want to continue to have the watchdog on by default? It seems like the consensus is yes. So the positives here is like Osquery is not going to chew up too many system resources. The downside is it may stop at various points and you'll have to investigate what happened. I think a larger like topic is in the recent versions, so through 4.2 and forward, we did work to improve Osquery's shutdown, so it always shuts down gracefully. My expectation is that you get a lot more log messages now, and so that it becomes easier to debug when the watchdog has taken action. I kind of want to open that to the audience. Is like, if anyone's deployed these recent versions, have you found that this debugging is easier? And another final topic is like, any ideation or brainstorming about how we can maintain the watchdog, but then get richer log messages when it takes action, would be very welcomed in an issue if we don't have any ideas right now.
So I've been meaning to have a brainstorming meeting here at Trail of Bits about performance troubleshooting, and this is a big part of it, because we have a client who's very sensitive to imagined performance risk. They sit on the fence. They are not going to deploy Osquery until they have really strong guarantees about knowing when it affects performance and getting it resolved quickly. So they want us to handhold them through the troubleshooting steps, and I think we would love to see as much information as possible regarding the performance. So if it happens outside of a query as well, that's something that I think is kind of a blind spot. If hypothetically Osquery begins using CPU, but it's not in the context of a query, do we know that? And if we don't know that, is there a way we can quickly troubleshoot it,
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe one way to get that is when the watchdog decides to take action. So you've come to a point where Osquery is going out of bounds of what the performance you decided was acceptable. And now at that point, it's basically what thread is using the most either IO or resource. There's always a single well-known thread, the scheduler thread, that's going to be executing queries. So if we do get that like per thread performance impact, then it's easy to debug whether it's something in a query, outside a query. Other than that, it's extremely challenging because with most complex deployments, there's maybe like always a query running. And so there's never this point where like Osquery is just idle, and if it exhausted the resources that you've configured as like your upper bound, your watchdog limit, it's still challenging to say whether you just allocated one more page and that's what caused it to fail, or you have a side-by-side query, like the query is running in the scheduler thread doing nothing, and the distributed query executor is the one to blame.
But did you say you wanted to open like a blueprint issue on this, on like how to maybe improve performance visibility?
I'd probably be I can offer ideas. I'm probably not the best person to like say like what the situation, what the problem is right now, just because I'm trying to reflect like a lot of things that I've heard inside of the Slack channel. So
That's
someone that
same
has,
for us, yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't have a large deployment where we see issues. We just have clients that are always asking us about reassurances, and it's not always even replicated or replicatable issues. Sometimes we just are chasing ghosts, but they need better tools for that.
Does I guess maybe two questions. I haven't stared at the watchdog code. Does it log the actions taken, or just like the observations?
it does log, yeah.
I mean, it seems like that should be some visibility.
Well, the watchdog and the worker, which are the two processes that run, they don't communicate.
Yeah.
Mostly because we want the watchdog to be as slim as possible. So yes, it logs what action it was taken, and yes, there's a little bit of logic to infer when the worker comes back. It tries to log what it was doing when it was asked to stop. But beyond that, there's nothing specific, nothing concrete.
You know, maybe a question for Mike. You mentioned, right, your client has a lot of concerns about potential performance impact, and you know, I hear that as going in a couple of directions. Like one of them is, does monitoring the Osquery schedule table get them any of the rope they need or any of the rope you need? And the other one is there some kind of sort of query, pre-deploy query vetting a la perform.py or, you know, something better that would help mitigate what they're looking for?
Well, I think they're aware of the Osquery schedule table, but the next thing I'm going to do is gather up, aggregate some resources on that, maybe give them a little bit of training on that, just so that they're comfortable with it as a tool. But I think these suggestions, like the watchdog and the Osquery schedule table, they assume that Osquery is never going to lock up or
sure, they're fundamentally about query performance, which is most of the performance we've seen, but we have seen bugs where like RocksDB will chew through CPU or something. I remember some bug about
I don't
that.
know how likely that is, but it's the kind of thing they're worried about is Osquery having an issue that it's not able to be self-aware of, because
what platform are they?
All of them, but I think Windows is probably the leading platform.
Because like on Linux, you just C group it and be done with it. But I don't know what your other platform choices are.
I don't either.
On Windows, I think you the most common is to sort use the NT API, which are not exposed, like NT suspend and NT resume process, which suspend, so you monitor the process and suspend it and then resume, though it's kind of a hack. Yeah, there's no resource control there.
That's all I had on this issue, but appreciate it being brought up. We also probably need to go soon.
Yeah, I need to drop off as well. See you, everybody.
Nice to see folks. Sounds like probably we're all breaking up. So
yeah,
great to see a lot of new faces this week, or old faces returning. So
guys, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for the help with the notes. I'll get this on YouTube.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.